Hello everyone, buddy, and welcome to our quick and dirty introduction to copyright in music, brought to you by Tune. In this episode, we cover aspects of copyright, music rights, and royalties. In the last episode, we looked at publishing and recording industries, how they work in practice, who runs them, and what copyright exists in each, or rather, what aspect of the copyright. We now know that while the two industries are separate, they depend on each other to work. Now we're going to take a closer look at the copyright and various aspects that exist. We'll also have a look at the royalties that get generated from the use of each aspect of the right. Let's start with the burning question. What the heck is a royalty? In the broad sense, a royalty is money that is paid to the owner of a copyright or patent for its whole or partial use. With music, every time a copyright is used, it generates a royalty in the form of money for the rights holders. As we go through each set of rights in this episode, you'll notice that each use of it generates a specific kind of royalty. In music, other sources of income are also called royalties. For example, artists are paid recording royalties by record labels for their share of sales revenue. These are due to the artist as per the conditions in their record contract, which is based on copyright. When a copyright is used and generates a royalty, we use the word exploitation, or to exploit. While the word may have a negative connotation for some, as in taking advantage, to exploit in the music world simply means to use as an asset in such a way as to generate financial gain. We could also call it commercialization. So, when a publishing rights holder grants permission for their work to be used, that rights holder is exploiting that copyright. Using rights is the same thing as exploiting rights. If a rights holder wants to exploit their copyright, they need to license them. We've used the word licensing a lot in these videos. In basic terms, we're referring to permission that the rights holder gives to somebody else to administer or use their copyright. So, whenever copyright is exploited, the owner gets a royalty and the person or organization that is using the work gets a license to do so. Licenses are involved in almost every step of the copyright journey. In some cases, for some rights such as publishing and neighboring, they can be blanket licenses, which means a music user pays an annual or monthly fee to use lots of music. In other cases, like for mechanical and sync rights, licenses can be negotiated on a case-by-case basis with an individual license required for each use. We've talked a lot about copyright so far, but what exactly are they? In the first episode, we learned that the word copyright literally means the right to copy. This implies that the owner of a copyright has a set of rights that allows them to decide what to do with it and how it is to be used. We refer to this set, or at least these sets of rights, as the aspects of the copyright. To understand this better, let's have a quick look at South African copyright law. In South Africa, our law only recognizes a single copyright for each musical work and each recorded work. So, in the case of a musical composition, creating a lyrical composition on paper and then recording it would create two separate copyrights, one for the composition and one for the actual recording. Each of these aspects references a different way that the rights holder can exploit a single copyright. The ways to exploit a copyright are colloquially referred to as rights, the rights a copyright owner has over their work. It's always vital to be specific in your agreements to ensure the desired collective outcome is realized. With this in mind, we'll look at the generally accepted definitions of each aspect, beginning, as always, with the publishing industry and the publishing copyright. As we learned, when a musical work is written, it is automatically copyrighted. This is called a publishing copyright, and it protects the intellectual property in a piece of music and is owned by the songwriters and/or the publishing company. It has two aspects, performance rights and mechanical rights. As we now know, each of these refers to an aspect of the copyright that an owner has that they can exploit. Performance rights have three distinct rights in a musical work: the right to perform a work in public, the right to broadcast a work, and the right to transmit a work through a diffusion service. Whenever an original song is broadcast, played, or performed in public, the rights holder in that work should earn royalty income. In simple terms, whenever the musical work is used in public, it requires a performance license, which generates performance royalties for the owners of the publishing copyright. Performance rights are managed and licensed by performance rights organizations, or PROs. We'll discuss them in the next episode. So who pays for these licenses? Well, that is anyone who either broadcasts music, hosts live performances of music, or transmits music to the public. To clarify, broadcasters are TV or radio stations, referring specifically to telecommunication services. People who host live music concerts are concert promoters or live music venues. Anyone who transmits music and does so via some form of speakers, for example, elevators, coffee shops, offices, or any other public space that plays music, is also liable to pay a royalty. In most cases, the music users will acquire a blanket license that allows them to use all of the music they want with a single fee. Each blanket license is calculated differently based on how the music will be used, how many members of the public will hear it, and the size of the space it is to be used in. The second aspect under publishing rights is the mechanical right, which refers to the right to reproduce the work in some form. In most cases, it involves a neighboring rights holder, which are artists or labels, paying the publishing rights holder for the use of the work that they didn't write. If an artist wants to distribute and sell music in any format or record a song they did not write, they need to pay for the use of the intellectual property of the musical work. This comes in the form of licensing, giving them the right to reproduce the intellectual property. To reproduce means to make many versions or change the format of the same body of work. Of course, music is available in many different formats these days, so a mechanical royalty will need to be paid for each and every format and copy that the music is released on. In some cases and in some countries, licenses need to be negotiated. For example, if an artist wants to record a song that they don't own, they will contact the owners of the publishing rights and ask for permission to use the musical work. They will then negotiate a licensing fee and often a share of the neighboring copyright the original publishing rights holder would have. This will form a new record or a new song, and that will have a separate copyright associated with it, often referred to as a new master right. In other cases, like in South Africa and where musical works publishing rights are administered by a music rights organization or MRO, a standard mechanical licensing fee is payable for each reproduction. So when the digital recording files are put onto a CD, when the tape recording is put onto a vinyl disc, or a recording is downloaded or streamed from a server via the internet, a mechanical license is required and therefore a royalty is generated. Payment of the mechanical license is due when the reproduction takes place. So when a CD is manufactured or a song is streamed, the license is created and the royalty is due. This is how publishing rights holders make money when their music is used by someone else. Let's move on to the recording industry. As we learned, when a new master recording is created, a brand new copyright is created to protect the actual sound recording. It is owned by either the artists who made it or by a record label that paid for the recordings. The master or neighboring copyright has a single aspect to it, though it's usually exploited in performance-based usage, very similar to the performance rights that we just spoke about, and in packaged formats, like downloads, CDs, and vinyl sales. Let's start by clearing up some confusion. When some talk about master rights, they also incorporate neighboring rights. While they're generally not exactly the same thing, this is a problem the industry faces due to a lack of standardization. Master rights generally refer to the recording, while neighboring rights refer to the right to perform what is on the recording. When the rights are used in a performance-based sense, they generate needle time royalties and can even be referred to as needle time rights. When the rights are used in a packaged format like a CD, they are generally referred to as master or neighboring rights. The revenue from the sale of these is, as we know, called recording royalties. Neighboring rights get their name because they depend on publishing rights to exist, as we learnt in episode 2, and are therefore neighboring rights to the publishing rights. Naturally, due to how the industry has developed, they mirror performance rights, as we'll see. As recording technology was invented, a need was identified to compensate the people who played on a specific recording whenever a recording was used in public. The neighboring rights holders reserve the right to license the recordings for broadcast or transmission to the public in the same way as performance rights. This means that for anyone to use music in a public space, they need to acquire both the performance and the neighboring licenses, which means they'll be paying 2 sets of royalties, one for the publishing rights holders and one for the neighboring rights holders. Neighboring rights are administered by mechanical licensing collectives, or MLCs, in the same way with a blanket license. The last elephant in the room that we need to talk about is sync rights. We've mentioned them a few times but left them for last because they involve both publishing and neighboring rights. An additional aspect of both copyrights are synchronization rights, or sync for short. This is when a recorded work is synced to any visual elements. Because it is recorded music, sync rights do not fully fall under publishing. They are part of publishing rights and partly neighboring rights. From the publishing rights holder point of view, a sync license can be thought of as a mechanical license for video. In the eyes of the neighboring rights holders, it is similar to performance-based rights. A sync license is required if anybody wants to match any audio to any visual element. It applies to film, television shows, ads, video games, accompanying website music, movie trailers, and so much more. Therefore, music users who require a sync license are the people or organizations that create such media: filmmakers, television producers, advertising agencies, and the like. Technically, when music is matched with visuals, a whole new copyright is created for this new AV media. A video copyright will include both the neighboring and publishing copyrights. Because sync licenses require both the publishing and neighboring rights holders to agree the terms of the exploitation, they are often quite difficult to obtain. Generally, the neighboring and publishing rights holders are different people or even organizations, which means that to get a license, the user needs to negotiate with both of them. This is often solved in practice by actually allowing one of the parties to agree to this on behalf of the others, and then have them be entitled to a fixed share of the revenue generated. In fact, with today's technology that allows songwriters and artists to self-publish and release, it is much easier for a music user to get a sync license from a fully independent artist. That is someone who owns both their publishing and neighboring rights. Sync licenses can be extremely lucrative for rights holders. Consider if a filmmaker wants to use your song in a film that will be watched by millions of viewers many times. Each time that film is used, a portion of the licensing fee is paid to the owners of the music copyrights that are used in it. Or just think back to when you booted up Need for Speed Underground and heard that brum-bum-bum. So those are the rights that we hear about in the music industry. In episode 4, we will be looking at exactly how music users acquire licenses and how the majority of royalties get to the correct rights holder. We'll be talking about a massive global network of organizations and collective societies that make the music money wheel go around. CMOs, PROs, MLCs, less acronyms please. Thanks for watching, and we'll tune you later.